Members want all of the Salivation Nation. Why gold is money? We're going to take a look at this through an infographic perspective from Visual Capitalist here. The economist John Maynard Keynes famously called gold a barbarous relic, suggesting that its usefulness as money as an artifact is of the past. In an era filled with cashless transactions and hundreds of cryptocurrencies, this statement seems truer today than in Keynes' times. However, gold also possesses elemental properties that has made the idea for money throughout history. So we're going to take a look at this through a really cool infographic that's a animated GIF. So we're going to have to time this thing. We'll catch it right as wherever it is, and then explore from there and take a look at why this is the case. So here we see why gold is money, and we're gonna let this thing play out here, and we're gonna start from the beginning and go through some of this, and we're gonna pick this apart and discover gold a little bit more as to why it is the case. Which properties does gold possess that make it a natural choice for money usage? Let's use a process of elimination to figure this out. Gas or liquid state at room temperatures or standard pressure, they're not solid. They're known for overreacting. Alkali metals and alkali earth metals are highly reactive, and some can burst into flames. Obviously, this isn't a good choice. Lanthanides, actinides, and other elements like arsenic can be radioactive and have toxic properties. And then these elements here are too common, which would not make a good choice for good money. And the earth crust, 1 parts 2 million. And then there's also the opposite end, too rare. These elements that are too rare do not even occur naturally on Earth. And then here, when they're picking the right precious metals, rhodium and palladium weren't discovered until the 1800s. Like gold, platinum is easy in the eyes and found in rivers. However, its extremely high melting point would have been a deal breaker. Then we have silver. This is interesting. Silver says it's because it tarnishes, making it less appealing. And then we go to gold. So really, this should be silver and gold. Silver is actually used much more commonplace, and just because it tarnishes does not take away its reality for being money. This was kind of explained chemically by this guy here, Sanut Kumar, and this actually comes to us from NPR from about almost 9 years ago now, and he says a periodic table lists 118 different chemical elements, and yet for thousands of years, humans have really liked one of them in particular, gold. Gold has been used as money for millennia, and its price has been going through the roof. Of course, that was back then, and it's happening again now. Why gold? Why not osmium, lithium, or ruthenium? So, Sanut Kumar, a chemical engineer at Columbia University, was asked to take the periodic table and start eliminating anything that wouldn't work as money. The periodic table looks kind of like a bingo card. Each square has a different element on it, as we saw. One for carbon, another for gold, and so on. Sanut starts with the far right column of the table, and the elements have a really appealing characteristics. They're not going to change. They're chemically stable. There's also a big drawback. They're gases. You can put all your gaseous money in a jar, but if you open the jar, you'd go broke. So Sanut crosses out the right-hand column. Then the left-hand column, lithium. If you expose lithium to air, it would cause a huge fire that could burn through concrete walls, he said. Money that spontaneously bursts into flames is clearly a bad idea. You don't want your money undergoing any kind of spontaneous chemical reaction. That would be a case for sure, where money could literally burn a hole in your pocket, and they also can corrode and start to fall apart. There's other elements that would do that. So that's 38 elements because they're too reactive. Then we ask them about those weird rows at the bottom of the table, and there's always broken separately from the main table. They have some great names: Promethium, Einsteinium. There's also Californium. But it turns out they're radioactive, and some Einsteinium in your pocket, and a year later you'd be dead. So if we're down to 118 elements to 30, we've come up with a list of 3 requirements. Not a gas, doesn't corrode or burst into flames, and doesn't kill you. Now Sanat adds a new requirement. You want the thing you pick to be rare. Let's cross off the box at the top of the table because the elements clustered tend to be more abundant. And you don't want to pick an element that's too rare, so osmium, which apparently comes out of the earth via meteorites, gets the axe. That leaves us with rhodium, palladium, silver, platinum, and gold. All of them, as it happens, are considered precious metals. But even here, we can cross things out. Silver has been widely used as money, of course, but it's reactive, it tarnishes. So Sanat said that's not the best choice. But, in my view, this table should leave silver in there, because just because it tarnishes, that's it, does not mean that it necessarily reacts any other way. In fact, some people find the tarnishing quite appealing. Every civilization couldn't have used rhodium or palladium because they weren't discovered until the 1800s. And that leaves platinum and gold, both of which can be found in rivers and streams. But if you were in the ancient world and wanted to make platinum coins, you would have needed some sort of magic furnace from the future. The melting point of platinum is over 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Gold melts at lower temperatures, which makes it easier for pre-industrial people to work with. And then the people at NPR asked Sanat if we could turn the clock back and start history again. Could things go a different way, or would gold emerge again as the element of choice? For the Earth, every parameter we have, gold is the sweet spot. It would come out no other way. And says that today we don't use gold as money, we use paper. And really, it's the case we don't use gold as currency. It doesn't kill you, but it can be found in abundance and has an annoying tendency to burn when it comes into contact with flame. That's paper. And so I think that's an interesting thing. So that leads us to the historical part. And I'm going to take a look at this. I may have actually covered this infographic before, but I think it's worth going over because really, if you're nitpicking with regards to silver being used as money, it has been, and actually silver has been used more commonly as currency among pretty much all classes of people for a longer and more frequently than gold. But gold is unique because it doesn't react. In fact, it's even hypoallergenic, although there are some people who actually are allergic to gold. I just discovered that. 2 people that are within my realm of circles last week here. So this is an interesting infographic. Wars have been fought over gold. Love has been expressed with gold. And gold has changed the landscape of civilizations and the world, and it's doing so again today. What makes gold great? Gold is incredibly rare. All the gold mined since the dawn of civilization would fit in a 20 by 20 by 20 millimeter cube. And it may be a little bit larger than that now, because this is an older infographic. Every ring, crown, and bar on earth would fit into this cube. So every form that gold is would fit basically next to the Arc de Triomphe in France. Gold is malleable and ductile. A 1 ounce piece of gold can be hammered into a sheet 9 millimeter by 9 meter wide. 4.5 ounces of gold can be stretched into a 5 micron wire that would reach the International Space Station. Wow, that's fascinating indeed. And pure gold is so soft that you can create indents on pure gold by biting it with your teeth. Most of us know that. Most of us wouldn't do that with our coins. It readily creates alloys with other metals. It's a good conductor of heat and electricity. It is very dense. It is highly lustrous. And it does not react with air, moisture, or other corrosive agents. And that is important. I think that's where it does have a silver beat, as well as being much more rare. All right. And 1 ounce could be stretched to form a wire 9 times the height of Mount Everest. Civilizations and wealth. Gold is the first metal that was widely known to mankind. This is because, unlike other metals, it can occur naturally in pure and workable states like flakes or nuggets. So we look at Egyptians in 3600 BC. Egyptians were the first to smelt gold. Hieroglyphics to describe gold in Egypt about 2600 BC. In 1223 BC, King Tut's golden funeral mask is created. And then they invent the lost wax technique, still used today in jewelry making. In fact, this technique is also used by members of the silver pouring community. Very fascinating indeed. They learned to alloy gold with other metals to hardness and color variation. Very cool. This is all in the Egyptians. Then the Lydians meant the first coin ever made for trade. This is about 564 BC, but I thought it was about 700 BC when they made a natural alloy of gold and silver, which is called electrum. And we don't see electrum being utilized as much, but I think they ought to make electrum coins. I think that would be a nice homage to history if one of the mints would make an alloy of gold and silver, which I assume would be probably close to 50% each. That would make for a pretty interesting piece, I believe. The Chinese began circulating the yin yuan, a square gold coin, around the same time. Interesting. Although I think this date is probably copied over. So my guess is this is 700 BC and that's 564 BC. The Greeks also used it around 433 BC. Alexander the Great sacks the Persian Empire, loots their legendary gold treasure. And they also began to practice alchemy, which is the quest of turning base metals into valuable gold, which is, it's a quest. That's being the key word there. The Romans, from 58 BC, Julius Caesar brings back enough gold from a victorious campaign in Gaul to give 200 coins to each of his soldiers to repay all of Rome's debts. Now, there you go. We've heard about an ancient Roman soldier being paid 1 denarius for 12 hours labor. Well, that's about a tenth of an ounce of silver. Now, at the time, silver was much harder to get in these areas than it is now, obviously. But so the abundance of gold, well, there you go. That's how they paid them back then. The Romans are the first to use gold as a widespread currency system. Very cool. Also, it should be noted that in the Eastern Roman Empire, known as the Byzantine Empire, the salutis coin lasted probably the longest gold coin to ever be used without debasement. The Romans invent new ways to extract gold on a large scale through hydraulic mining. Yes, indeed. And we see some of that in Spain when they were in Spain. Speaking of Spanish, and King Ferdinand of Spain said to explorers, get gold humanely if you can, but all hazards get gold. In other words, that was the key. That was what they did. And some argue that it was not very humane in how they were able to acquire that gold in the explorations of the Americas. Within years, the Inca and Aztec civilizations would fall to Spanish conquistadors. So in addition to its rarity, gold's properties made it obvious choice for currency. And this is where it starts to really hit home for us. Gold is easy to press into coins and bullion. It is also easy to identify because of its density and color. It does not tarnish or rust, making it long-lasting. I think that is one of the most attractive qualities for gold, other than its substance, is that it is the least reactive, other than platinum. Gold gave rise to the concept of currency itself: portable, private, and permanent. In fact, gold fits 3 generally accepted conditions to be used as money. It's a medium of exchange, it's a unit of account, it's a store of value. Now, obviously, the other properties, the fact that it's least reactive, it's divisible, and recognizable as well. Very good. So then we get down here to the gold standard. Over time, countries adopted the gold standard as a monetary system where currency would be fixed to a weight of gold. Great Britain was the first to do this, and its economic power put pressure on other countries to follow suit. In the 19th century, all major countries other than China used the gold standards. Part of this was due to silver becoming more abundant and declining in value. Yes, indeed. So this is quite fascinating. We can see here, and this gives us some a realistic look at silver. Silver was being mined, especially much more in the 20th century, where in the 16th century, the value of gold relative to silver was 15.5 to 1. In fact, that was pretty much a fixed value even up until the part of the 20th century, even though when you turns into actual open market value, it was about 50 times more commonplace. So this 50 to 1 was really there, and as far as its value and its abundance of silver there. So we look at some famous gold rushes. Prospects of hitting gold enticed workers across the world to migrate to new frontiers where gold was discovered. Placer gold, occurring in nuggets and flakes, allowed prospectors to find gold with simple and inexpensive tools like gold pans. In North Carolina in 1799, early American gold rush occurred after a 12-year-old boy discovered a 17-pound gold nugget in Cabarrus County, North Carolina. So that nugget would be worth about $430,000 today. In California in 1848, the discovery of gold caused the population of San Francisco to swell from 1,000 to 25,000 in just 2 years. Hundreds of ships used to deliver prospectors were abandoned in the city's harbor. Sailors were unwilling to leave the boomtown to sail them back. Then in Klondike, gold discovered in the Klondike River area of the Yukon, BC started a stampede of 100,000 people. For the 30 to 40% of people who completed the journey, it would take 5 years of money to recoup the money spent getting there. Wow, quite a risk there. Then gold in the space age. Humanity's first trips to space were heavily dependent on the bright metal, as its lustrous surface reflected the sun's dangerous radiation that would otherwise harm astronauts and equipment. Space shuttle contains approximately 40 kilograms of gold. Very cool. And today's reserves are an estimated 171,300 tons, 31,000 tons. Government, central banks, and international organizations, those numbers have changed now. We have it in the U.S. Bullion Depository in Fort Knox, and that's about 4,581 tons. And then in the Federal Reserve Bank in Manhattan, we've got more, 6,710 and 18 tons. All right, very good. The cylindrical vault test rests 80 feet below the street level on Manhattan's bedrock, one of the few foundations considered adequate to support the weight of the vault, the door, and the gold inside. Fort Knox is protected by atomic bomb-proof vaults, 22-ton front door, 300 tanks, and 30,000 soldiers. So, in conclusion, gold is an extremely unique, useful, and versatile metal. It has proved irreplaceable throughout the ages and applications as varied as human history itself. And next, we have mining and supply. We're going to take a look at that because I think that is quite an interesting aspect of it. Because there's more of it now than there ever was of gold. Same thing with silver, obviously. The ancient times of two famous gold pushes. Gold is first discovered on placer deposits. And placer occurs gold when host rock weathers and releases gold particles that travel downslope to a hillside. And you can see how it's done here. And sluicing, and this is the way they do it. Modern gold mining. Most gold comes from hard rock deposits where gold is disseminated or associated with other metals and mined either through open pit or underground mining. Yes, indeed. Those are the two ways you do it. And open pit, I think, is a fascinating way. There's one in Australia called the super pit. Very cool. And underground mining, where people go literally down 3.9 kilometers beneath the surface. That's the one in South Africa, the deepest gold mine. And here you can see how it's dissolved in hot pressurized fluids for these underground gold deposits form. Deep in the crust when transported upwards on fissures and cracks where deposited closer to the surface. All right. So generally, gold ore only has a couple of grams of gold per ton. So how does it come out? About 90% of the gold produced today is discovered through a cyanide leaching process. Very dangerous, obviously. And ore is crushed, flattened, and sprayed with a cyanide solution. The gold-bearing solution is collected. Then the gold is precipitated out of the solution. Cyanide leaching recovers over 97% of gold, but remains controversial in some places because of the toxic nature of cyanide. Also, some illegal mines use mercury as well. So here's the gold supply. There are three distinct streams that make up gold supply. 1.5% official sales, 37% recycled gold, and 61.4% mine production. Official sector sales refers to reserve gold sold by governments and banks. So here's a closer look at supply relative to gold prices over the last 10 years. And we can see here official sales, recycled gold, and mine production. You can see that. And this is obviously an older chart. This has probably changed somewhat, but more than likely it's probably closer, averaging out what this is probably today. And we can see here that it got to $1,600. We're not that far off, by the way, to $1,600 an ounce again. Or 1,600 but for different reasons this time, I believe. 571% of demand is an increase in gold purchases by central banks. And so this is taking some of them off there. And I think that's what, in part and parcel, because it's been increasing as of late. Russia and China especially getting those gold reserves. I think that's playing a part in the gold prices going up. When gold prices led to 30% growth in gold production between 2002 and 2011, high prices mean more gold deposits are economic to produce. So look at there. Look at this. Yes, indeed. The increase in price from 2002 to 2011. Recycled gold. Since the 2008 financial crisis, more people have opted to recycle gold because of its higher price. Between 2002 and 2011, supply from gold recycling has increased 93%. We could see an influx of that again, although there's less of it now there because more people are taking that and melting it, getting it melted down, or selling it. Discoveries are declining, and gold is becoming more expensive to find. So here we see the copper gold mines and primary gold. And so there you go. We can see that. Data shows that the grade of underground and open pit gold mines are decreasing over time. It means that large-scale, high-grade gold deposits are rarer than ever before. Although this is obviously old data, I think they have found some other new... That's the thing. Technology is going to make it so that we can find geologically ways to discover and find places more economically viable to do so. So take some of this for a grain of salt. Consider its time. So who's still producing gold? Well, China is still the biggest producer of gold at 13%. Some of these numbers probably have shifted a bit there, but we've talked about this before too. Australia is second. China, Russia, and South Africa, all these countries. A big USA is 9%. I think USA is behind South Africa and Russia now. I could be wrong. So here we see the gold reserves around the world. This is outdated as well. Central banks hold a small percent of assets as reserves to reduce risk. Most countries have gold reserves as part of their holdings. And so here's the cube that we saw in relation to the arch here. And these are all the different nations and what they hold. Although this has changed, obviously, especially since 2010-11. As Russia, China have been getting more. Look at that. But the United States, I think ours is probably has stayed around the same. We've got 8,133.5 tons. Let's see here. Reserves of recently modernized countries will often contain more currency than precious metals. There you go. There that is. All right, so there is that. And we can see that there's been quite a demand for gold, and these central banks are acquiring it to protect themselves, especially since Basel III has now made gold a Tier 1 asset, which is, I think, playing a part as well in the demand and price. Speaking of uses and demand, let's move on to this next part. Very fascinating at the end. The global gold market can be divided into three distinct categories: investment, jewelry, and technology. Now look at this. Now imagine this has shifted somewhat, but even if it was within 5% you can see that gold is treasured, either as jewelry, as, quote, investment, although I don't like to consider gold as an investment. It is a versatile metal, but it is mostly treasured. Gold's most important property for technology use is its resistance to corrosion and tarnish. While silver and copper are better conductors, gold is by far the most reliable and long-lasting. That's true. Gold is optimal in telecommunications, computers, defense systems, medical equipment, and other mission-critical technology, especially in space. We see here, we talked about that before. There you go. Nanotechnology, energy efficiency. The Royal Bank Plaza building in Toronto has a thin coating of gold glazing in windows, provides excellent reflection of heat, radiation, keeping buildings cool in summer and warm in the window. All 14,000 windows are coated with 70 kilograms of pure gold. That's fascinating. Gold's unique optical properties allows it to be used on a nanoscale to detect pregnancy, progression of HIV and salmonella. It's also utilized in research in the fight against cancer. Gold is used around the world in catalytic converters in cars, trucks, and heavy-duty vehicles. Now, that is news to me. I didn't realize that it could be used as a catalytic converter, but that's fascinating indeed. Gold and jewelry is the obvious case. We can see the different, purities of gold, from 6K, 12K, 18K. And you see 12 carats is half and half gold and half alloy. 24 karat is soft. Because gold is very soft and is alloyed with other metals, there's some traditional hues that can be created using silver and copper. So this is fascinating. The more copper you use, it have more of a deeper reddish kind of look to it. And silver gives it more of a white. So white gold. So the red gold is 75% gold, 25% copper. Pink gold is 75% gold, 20% copper, and 5% silver. So gold overall demand, jewelry, technology, investment, you can see here. And you can see how that is really skewed to the scale here in 2011 for, quote, investment. So here we see China versus India. Grams of new gold jewelry bought per capita. China and India, very unique because they, for cultural reasons, they're acquiring gold. India and China, the two most populous countries in the world together, present over half of the world's global gold demand. Indians and Chinese buy more gold and jewelry per person, and Indians, despite earning less money than Chinese Americans in particular, and prize gold, spending 50 times more than their annual income on gold than the average American. Fascinating indeed. Per capita, India is going to be well ahead if there's ever a global collapse, for sure. The difference in culture and economic growth. Gold is synonymous with wealth. No gold, no wedding for dowries, that's right. For Dwala, very good. 10 million weddings take place in India each year. Dhanteras is the first day of the 5-day Dwala festival in northern India. Hindus consider buying gold to bring good luck on this day. About 10 tons of gold are sold in this day alone in India. Fascinating. It's, again, a part of the religious and cultural experience. In China, gold has a rich history in Chinese culture, but the rise of demand of gold and jewelry has more to do with an increase of wealth per person. Today, China is second only to the U.S. with a middle-class population of 157 million people. That has probably grown since then. As of 2012, there are over 1 million millionaires living in China. And that number may have increased, but maybe not, because her economy is suffering somewhat right now. Strong economic growth in China has led to big increases in gold demand from year to year. And I'll note, again, as central banks, they're grabbing a lot more gold. This is India and China numbers. Fascinating indeed. So who is buying gold jewelry? Well, no surprise. It is India and China there. Fascinating indeed. So gold has been used as jewelry since ancient times. It's still irreplaceable as many cultures. Gold also fuels technology and important electronics and other uses. Perhaps the most important use of gold is as an investment. So we'll look at it as an investment, even though I like to consider it not as an investment, but as a hedge, a protection. So we look at this here, we can see that gold has outperformed the S&P 500 each year 9 of 12 times. And these could hold true today because we're getting close to that $1,600. We're getting closer to that $1,600 an ounce. Buying gold in 2000 would have yielded over 600% return at today's prices. And again, it would come close to that again right now. Is gold commonly a commodity or currency? Of course, these are questions we've already answered. But it says it fits traditional definition of a commodity, but it also has been used as a currency for most of history. As a result, gold exhibits some characteristics of both a commodity and currency. Same with silver, but I would say that gold contains more properties of a currency than it does a commodity. Things of value, uniform quality that were produced as a definition of large quantities by many different producers. This item from each different producer are considered equivalent. The last 30 years, gold has had high negative correlation with the U.S. dollar, which suggests it behaves like a currency. That's right. More recently, gold has an even stronger negative correlation with the trade-weighted U.S. dollar. We can see that there. And really, in some aspects, silver does as well, although it's a little bit more volatile, which is why silver is seen more as a commodity than gold is in the marketplace and also in the general uses. Gold is also held by central banks who have turned into net buyers since 2010. Together, they hold around 35,000 tons and roughly 20% of all gold ever mined. That number has probably increased since then. You don't see them holding on to commodities such as concentrated orange juice for their reserves. That's true. So investing in Gold 101. History has shown gold to have several properties as an investment. Gold helps diversify a portfolio because gold price has low correlation with most asset classes and is driven by different factors. Gold can help diversify a portfolio. I'll add as an insurance policy, not necessarily as an investment, I don't believe. All right, let's see here. Gold is a hedge against inflation and currency devaluation. Now, that is the key selling point, I believe, for gold here. As the monetary supply increases, so has the price of gold. Very true, and we're seeing this is after probably 2 rounds of quantitative easing. We see there. There were 3. Some are talking about 4. The U.S. debt is at $16 trillion and growing. Boy, you can tell this is an older, because now we're coming up on $23 trillion in debt. If the U.S. economy is not able to pay this off through growth, they will likely have to further devalue the dollar to balance the budget. And that's exactly what they're doing. Top 5 years for U.S. inflation, 1946, 74, 75, 79, and 1980. And during those times, the average rate of real return on gold was 130.4%. Gold retains its purchasing power when the cost of goods rises. That's exactly right. That's, to me, is an example of a hedge, not a investment. Gold helps protect against volatility and risk. Another bolstering point of why it's not an investment. In times of economic, political, or social unrest, gold has traditionally held its value. There we go. We can see that there. Between the volatility index and gold, it is interesting to see how these can kind of correlate together here. Supply and demand. There are only 439 gold deposits left in the world that are 1 million ounces or more. And high-grade gold deposits are becoming increasingly rare. Very good. You can see the producing deposits. And these numbers, I'm sure, have changed. So you see some factors that affect the price of gold. Interest rates, inflation, GDP growth, debt, economic stress, supply and demand. Saving disposal plays a bigger role than consumption. Geopolitical and speculation, manipulation, short selling, I believe those play the least role. I know others think that disagree with me on that, but all right. Different ways to get exposure to gold through ETFs and bullion and mining stocks, but you know what? We believe in getting the gold, the bullion itself, acquiring the physical. Not only do you own it because you hold it, but it's also enjoyable to be able to see your wealth and to hold it and touch it. All right, so here's Warren Buffett has 0% now, but I think it's been said that he had some silver. Jim Cramer's got 20%. Again, these are older numbers. Harry Brown, who was the 1996 Libertarian candidate nominee, has 25%, doesn't surprise me. Mark Faber at 25%. Ron Paul, 64%, that doesn't surprise us. John Paulson, 44%. There you go. Gold is the ultimate store of value. Gold has a tendency to stay strong even in the face of inflation, uncertainty, or currency devaluation. As central banks continue to increase the money supply in today's economic climate, investors continue to turn to gold as a safe haven for their investments. If the central banks can acquire gold, well, we can become our own central banks. By the way, in August 2012, George Soros made headlines by dumping major U.S. bank stocks of Citigroup, J.P. Morgan, and Goldman Sachs to buy $130 million worth of gold via SPDR Gold Trust. So that's very interesting indeed. And by the way, he's a very left-wing Keynesian guy, so he's even understood that the barbarous relic is not so barbarous. Now, we won't go into the gold deposit rankings for 2012 because this is obviously outdated here to the point. A lot of these, Visual Capitalist has not updated or created any new gold infographics other than this periodic table thing here that we went through earlier that talks about the movement and why gold has been chosen as the ultimate form of money, and really it is. But there's, again, I would say that it should be revised to include silver, because gold really, in a sense, is in many cases almost too rare to be used in everyday transactions, which is where silver comes in. So despite the tarnishing, this infographic and what I've covered has admitted that silver has been used as money more often and longer than gold throughout history. But gold is money, and we've covered that here, and we've told you and explained exactly why that's the case. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to y'all for watching, and encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.